What spy weapon is the best? Well, it depends. It's not just a simple scale of power, it's about using the right weapon in the right situation, and using it effectively. I'm of the opinion that Spy has no outright bad weapons, like the Thompson on the Engineer. Each have use cases, but some more often than others. Thus, I made this tier list for Spy's weapons. But this is not based on overall power. This list is based on how consistently a weapon performs well. Some weapons may be stronger than others in the right situations, but other weapons perform well more often and are less reliant on the right scenario. This list only takes into account core game modes, ranging from the casual queue to servers like Uncletopia and organized Highlander lobbies. This does not take into account alternative game modes, heavily modded servers, and 6v6, since they often change too much about what is effective. Also, because I know people will comment about it, only weapons that are functionally distinct are accounted for. Weapons like the Black Rose or Wanga Brick don't matter because they function the exact same as the weapons that are reskins of, that essentially go in the same tier. Weapons will be compared to others that take up the same slot, as debating on if the Big Earner or the Sapper is better to equip is dumb because you can have both at the same time. As for the tiers themselves, there are 4. Always powerful are the weapons that are good no matter the situation you equip them in. You can never go wrong with these ones. Versatile are weapons that, while having weaknesses, are rarely super detrimental and can often be played around, still reasonably being able to be used in your main loadout. Situationally strong are the weapons that have moments where they shine, but other moments where they struggle. And crippling weaknesses are weapons that fall off hard when up against the wrong situation, heavily reliant on being in the right situation to perform. This list isn't an end-all be-all for weapons you should be using. This is more of a rough guideline so you actually think about why you're equipping a weapon. My word isn't gospel, and what I say here isn't a set-in-stone fact. Some may disagree for perfectly valid reasons, but again, hopefully this helps new players to make better choices with what they use. The good old stock knife. It backstabs people without any added fluff, no gimmicks it needs to rely on, no weaknesses that need to be played around, it's just the baseline thing. There is no time at which this knife is bad, it's just reliable. Not only that, but I would say it's easily the best knife for new players due to the aforementioned lack of gimmicks. But even as a skilled player, this thing still gets the job done. You can never go wrong with the stock knife. Straight into always powerful tier. Easily the simplest of the knife unlocks. 3-second speed boost and plus 30% cloak on kill, but minus 25 max health. The speed boost enables you to get nasty chain stabs, or make a quick getaway. That 3 seconds goes a long way when you cover that much more distance. Even against experienced players, the speed boost will often throw off their aim. But while 25 less health may not seem like much, the 100 health threshold is incredibly dangerous. Many weapons in this game do around 100 damage, meaning you can be one-shot by way more things you can normally take one hit from. If you get hit before getting a kill, you have a far lower chance of survival. And while it may be harder to hit you during the speed boost, if you do get hit, you may just be reduced to a pile of blood right there. If you aren't good at moving around the map to avoid getting found or hit, this knife may not be right for you. But that's a skill spy players learn over time regardless, so this is still good on any somewhat experienced spy. Granted, you have the room to avoid frontline spam. Some people insist that it's a straight upgrade, but that's downplaying how significant that health threshold is. Good when you can avoid hits, bad when you can't, which is largely skill dependent, aka a factor mostly in your control. Thus, it makes its way into versatile tier. This thing melts if it's in your hand while burning, rendering it unusable for 15 seconds, which can be sped up by ammo packs. However, in doing so, you gain 1 second of fire immunity and 10 seconds of afterburn immunity. The only other effects this knife has is that it turns backstab victims into ice statues. Obviously, this is the oh my god, I hate pyros so much knife. But equipping it doesn't make you immune to pyros, and can bring up new problems in the process. The knife is your main source of kills, and while you can stop the melting by not holding it in your hand, the second you pull it out while burning, it go bye-bye. This means even if it's harder for a pyro to kill you, it only takes one hit for them to completely shut down your ability to backstab, meaning you can't make sacrifice plays to kill a high priority target. This also means you can't trick stab the pyro if the flame so much as graze you, and many pyros will actually become more aggressive knowing they can't be trick stabbed. So, in some ways, the pyro still has an advantage. That ice statue thing isn't to be underestimated either. It's a clear sign of a nearby spy and can make people more aware of a potential attack. This is another knife that people like to call a straight upgrade, but the Pyro's ability to deny stabs easier and the eye statues combined absolutely don't make it one. You still need to play intelligently around the upside, and sometimes it's actually smarter to not use it if there's too many flames around. It also has utility for Intel Spy and Gun Spy, but more on that later. Into situationally strong it goes. The ultimate sneaky knife, and my personal favorite spy unlock. Upon backstab, you instantly disguise as your victim, alongside being completely silent, the corpse vanishing, and no kill feed message appearing. The downside is that the disguise kit now requires and consumes your entire cloak meter, plus your cloak drains 33% faster. This effectively turns disguises from something you can freely access into a resource. This combined with the cloak drain means you have to engage in much more resource management in order to not be found. And you can use the Latauncher to negate the drain penalty, but you aren't going to shoot it much anyway if you're being extra sneaky, so whatever Lamau. However, if you do avoid being found, backstabs, which are normally very loud, are now far more subtle and can often maintain your cover between kills. This isn't just because they're harder to hear, but the instant disguise will often put you in places that look convincing, since the real player was obviously just standing there a few seconds ago. Even if the victim calls out spy in voice chat, the disguise still delays their reaction. When using this knife, you very much need to change your approach to many situations, as it heavily relies on your ability to stay hidden and quickly adapt to different disguises. But the weird way that backstabs work throw off many players, especially good ones. You can even kill someone in front of a sentry without being peppered by bullets the next second. If you're the kind of player that loves the mind games and trickery of Spy, and is able to quickly think on the fly, this knife will just sort of agree with you. It's often more stressful and requires a lot more patience, but it also allows you to get away with things you normally wouldn't. While stock is more consistent, this knife is largely dependent on not only your overall skill, but just the kind of player you are. I wouldn't recommend this knife to players that are stressed out by Spy normally, but it works very well for the quick and calm thinkers. It may require more patience, awareness, and waiting, but pick your moments right and you'll get away with some really wacky stuff. The Ur is really good for spaced out bursts of kills, where stock allows you to more quickly get a single kill and retreat. Because of how it's largely dependent on its user's ability to play to its strength, goes right into versatile tier. I'm going to shock a lot of people with this one, but it goes right into crippling weakness tier. Why? Isn't it supposed to be overpowered? No, it's just really good at feeding off unaware players, which isn't a rare scenario in casual, aka the way most of my viewers play. Sure, you can easily keep getting tons of health and healing damage if you keep getting backstabs, but if too few players are leaving themselves open to backstabs constantly, you'll be stuck at 70 health a lot of the time. And yeah, you know that thing I said about the big earner? Basically, the better the enemy team is, the worse this knife becomes. And yes, I know you can say that about any weapon, but I mean in comparison to the other knives. It doesn't instantly become borderline useless as soon as some skill is involved, but the less oblivious players there are, the better the other options become. But beyond being better the worse the enemy team is, you still need a moderate amount of skill to use it, mainly being able to get backstabs quickly. If you're the kind of person who takes way too long to get a backstab once it's in range, first thing, stop relying on the knife raising. Second, don't use the kunai. And similarly to the big earner, you need to be able to avoid damage before getting a stab since, well, oh boy, you cannot afford getting hit with that. However, after a stab, that downside is temporarily invalidated, and can allow you to tank a whole bunch more damage than you normally could, getting some insane chain stabs. Now, is it fun to use? Yes. Is it annoying to fight against? Yes. Do I not like the way that it's balanced? Yes. Does any of that factor into this tier list? Nope. It may rely on the skill of its user, but it also relies heavily on the skill of the enemy. It sits in crippling weakness because while it may have its high highs, its reliance on a factor much outside the user's control also causes some low lows. It turns you invisible. You know how it works. The Invis Watch gives you by far the most mobility while in use. You can activate it whenever you want, drains only by the amount of time you use it, and is the only one that can be refilled with ammo packs while cloaked. Just like with the stock knife, it goes into always powerful. It's like stock, but instead of draining by the amount of time you use it, it drains based on how much you move while using it. The faster you move, the faster it drains. and if you don't move at all, it acts as if you weren't cloaked in the first place and starts filling back up. It trains about twice as fast as the Invis Watch when running at full speed, and can't be refilled by ammo packs without decloaking first. Think of it this way, the Invis Watch only limits the time you can use it, whereas the Cloak and Dagger limits mobility instead of time. If you're going to be moving around a lot, Invis is better. If you're going to stay in one place and wait, use Cloak and Dagger. Of course, you don't have to move with the Invis Watch. You can still wait around with it as well, you just can't do it for that long. The Cloak and Dagger allows you to not only wait and pick your moments, but also allows you to simply observe and watch. Without any time pressure, you're able to get a good look at the enemy lines, and this can help you make more informed decisions with how you attack, or use the Intel Spy strategy, which combos well with the Spy-cicle. Intel Spy is when you feed your team info about what the enemy is doing that they otherwise can't see. This is often used in competitive play, but is still effective in casuals, especially when queued up with friends. You could even act as a security camera for sticky traps your demo set. But if you're not doing Intel Spy and just waiting to attack, you can't play too passively, or else you might as well just be playing Flappy Bird in the corner. You still need to take some risks, and is a big beginner trap for new players that are too scared. You need to strike a balance between patience and risk-taking. While it may be good at allowing you to pick your moments, sometimes it makes your movement around the map so sluggish that you'd actually be getting more done with Invis. I find that Cloak and Dagger can be more effective on defense, since enemies are pushing into your territory, allowing you to wait for them to come. The patience it enables can also combo well with the Year, as long as you're okay with even less cloak, but stock is still viable in those situations as well. It has a lot of potential for intelligent playmaking, but at times can feel very sluggish compared to the mobility of the Invis, landing it right at the top of situationally strong. Oh boy, this thing. It allows you to fake your death by pulling it out and taking damage. The game will pretend the damage you just took was lethal, cloaking you instantly while dropping a fake corpse and a death message. The illusion isn't perfect, as there are some ways to tell if the death was fake. It has weaknesses, like the loud decloak noise, not being able to restore from ammo packs at all, requiring a full charge to even use, but none of those are even its biggest weakness, because of the fact it can't manually cloak. Right-clicking only brings it out to fake your death next time you take damage. There is no other way to activate the cloak, you have to take damage. Most of the time, you'll need to get shot to trigger it, meaning someone already knows you're there, and if they know you're using the Dead Ringer, you're basically forced to announce where you are just to go invisible. Sure, full damage works too, but even then, other things can give away that you just cloaked, like the fake death noise, fake kill feed message, even the damn scoreboard can give away when you decloak. They don't even need to see or hear you for that. If they know you're using the Dead Ringer, that can be used to track if you're cloaked or not, no matter where either of you are. And the fact that you have no normal cloak often gives away the fact you're using it before you even activate it, since spies normally use the cloak constantly. Invis restricts the time you can be cloaked. Cloak and Dagger restricts your mobility while cloaked. Dead Ringer just restricts your ability to cloak in the first place. Unfortunately, it's not very good at stealth due to the exploitable mechanics, and is often used for more aggressive playstyles. It's most well known for being paired with the Kunai, and you know that thing I said about it being good against bad teams and bad against good teams? Well, the Dead Ringer dials those traits of the Kunai up to 11. It makes it harder for some of the good players to deal with the obvious spies, since they can just brute force their way through the first set of attacks they get hit by, but if there aren't any oblivious players to farm health off of, then they're left with 70 health and no ability to cloak. It does have a lot more consistency on gun spy, since the watch is used more as a tool to take some damage and quickly reposition instead of being used to get behind people, relying very little on backstabs and making utility of the Spy-cicle shine more. Also, the spy's gun thing is to do with players that forget they have a gun and can shoot people. If you think it has anything at all to do with gun spy, you're missing the entire point and are making the same mistake that it's making fun of in the first place, but in reverse. The Dead Ringer isn't very good at stealth, and while having specific uses, also has very exploitable weaknesses that the other options simply don't have, landing it right at the bottom of crippling weakness tier. You put the thing on the thing and it sabotages the thing, making it stop working and slowly damaging it until it's destroyed. Yeah, in typical stock fashion, this one just works. It may only exist to fight engineers, so the whole spy versus engi matchup even works in the first place, but weapons are being compared to other weapons in their loadout slot, so it's not like you can go wrong by having it equipped. And plus, it doesn't have much competition. Straight into always powerful it goes. The only unlock in the Sapper slot. Instead of damaging the building, it reverses the construction process, first by reverting the building back to level 1, then playing the construction animation in reverse, which will destroy the building if it completes. Overall, it destroys buildings on its own way slower than stock, but when removed, it only takes a few extra swings to repair the damage done by stock. However, it only takes the red tape a few seconds to revert a building to level 1, which takes the engineer at minimum 8 hits and 200 metal to undo, and double that if it went from level 3 to level 1. Basically, you're almost guaranteed to get value out of the red tape regardless of if it gets removed, but stock will overall destroy it faster, which is even more value. That is, unless you place the red tape on a building that just got placed since the construction animation only just begun, it quickly reverses it and destroys the building near instantly. Hey, funny little tech. Can still be used to waste the time of good engineers, large clusters of nests, or uses the longer destroy time to mess with gunslinger edgies who can't replace the mini until your dumb slow Sapper finishes it off. However, as mentioned before, it destroys buildings slower than the stock Sapper, which is an even bigger waste of time than just deleveling. So stock is more consistent. Red tape goes into situationally strong tier. Wait, why am I even doing this one? Oh, right, because the comments would say I forgot about it, even though there's no point with how I didn't count reskins. Well, it literally has no competition, so into always powerful it goes, water is wet, orange is orange. Spy is a gun! It's the gun, it shoots people, it does damage, it's simple, and that's its greatest strength. Of course, most of your kills are still going to be with the knife, but it's not like it's trying to compete with the knife. It's just a matter of knowing when to use it. Use it to fight back against people who found you, pick off low health players in the distance, to confuse people into a trick stab, on brazeback snipers, etc. It's far from the most lethal weapon in the game, but it's still way more dangerous than your enemies may expect when they think they have a free kill. There's no gimmicks attached to it, it just works. You can't go wrong with it. Always powerful it goes. Stock weapons are just really, really good. Sacrifices 20% damage in exchange for 15% cloak restored on hit, and plus 40% cloak duration. The second upside is a passive benefit you get simply by having it equipped. Considering Spy doesn't want to be seen, having more time in cloak is very much desirable. While it has the lowest damage of all the revolvers, it's still a dangerous weapon, and that extended cloak upside alone is very powerful. It negates the year's reduced cloak downside entirely, partially nullifies the downsides of the Cloak and Dagger, and can restore Dead Ringer Cloak, and just generally allows you to move further with stock cloak. Some even consider this Spy's best revolver, and that's valid. The biggest risk that I've said before is that you don't want to become over-reliant on it. If you know how to play without it, then you can stretch its upsides further when you do. It may have a downside, but there's no scenario where its upside isn't powerful. I consider it on equal grounds to stock, and thus the first non-stock weapon to actually go into the always powerful tier. It's just that good. This one. It has a damage and firing speed penalty, no random crits, but not like that matters, but with the upside that headshots deal critical hits. Oh yeah, but those crits are also affected by range, but more on that later. This makes it the only non-sniper rifle weapon in the game that can headshot. What the game doesn't say is that headshots only count if it's been a full second since your last shot was fired, aka the spread recovery time, meaning you need to space out your shots if you're going for headshots. Now, this used to be considered the best gun for skilled spies, but Jungle Inferno added the downside that crits are affected by range. This nerf was arguably overdone. Combined with the spread recovery thing, makes it debatable what ranges it's more effective at as opposed to just using stock. The damage and firing speed penalty combined can actually make it do less damage than L'Étranger with body shots. Of course, it also relies on your ability to hit headshots. If you suck at headshots, you'll often just miss entirely, where with any other revolver, you would just aim for the body and hit more often. It's still decent in the hands of someone with good aim, but still nowhere near as consistent as stock with certain ranges. I won't argue that it can just be plain fun to use, especially on Gunspy, but it's not a factor in this list. Situationally strong it goes. To me, this is the gun that simply exists. It does 20% more damage while disguised, and bypasses most forms of damage resistance, the full list of which I'll show on screen now. The problem is that all of these, except for the cloak, are tied to unlocks, so they don't come up very often. And worse is that the Spy already bypasses all of these anyway with backstabs, and in the case of the Wrangler, the Sapper bypasses it. Though this upside still does have its uses, mostly in situations where you're in a fight and not sneaking up on them. but those situations with those specific unlocks don't come up too often as Spy. I found it best on Wrangler Happy Engies, Fist of Steel Heavies, Vax Medics, and Dead Ringer Spies. However, then there's the downsides. 15% fire rate and no random crits. Yeah. No random crits is pretty much a non-downside, and while 15% lower fire rate effectively translates to less DPS, it's still higher than the L'Éponge. Its upsides may be really situational, but its downsides are so minor that it gets into versatile tier just because of that. And yes, I've talked plenty about this one before. Basically, get a crit for every backstab or building sapped, with the downside of 15% base damage and no random crits. That's it. Its base damage is higher than the L'Éponge. No random crits is still a near non-downside, and the crits aren't affected by range like the Ambi, so crit shots always do 102 damage, two-shotting 8 of the 9 classes. While true that you may just beef your shots, you get crits pretty easily for just playing Spy, so it's not going to be too long till you get more if you're playing well. Especially if you kill an Engie and sap his nest, that's 5 whole crits right there. Bluntly, it's overpowered. Its only real downside is that it's not the L'Éponge, but I'm making my own tier for this one. It goes right into Curse tier. And that's the tier list. What do you think? Remember, this list is based on how reliable and consistent the weapons are, not how well they perform at their peak or how much I like them. It is pretty funny how all stock weapons share the same tier, but that really is because they're the most reliable. This is obviously subject to my opinion and isn't fact. You're welcome to disagree. Some of these placements I'm more confident in than others. You can make any weapon work as long as you know how and when to use it. This list aims to help you make more informed decisions about what loadout you choose. Don't just ask, is this loadout good, when you didn't even take the effort to think for yourself what it actually does and how it may be useful. A loadout isn't good just because. Some change in effectiveness based on your skill, the skill of the enemy, the map, what classes they have, and sometimes your choice of weapons can simply come down to personal preference. Whenever people ask me what the best loadout for Spy is, my answer is always full stock, because it's the most reliable across all situations, regardless of context. Thanks for watching. I don't know what to put here, so just look at this image I have in my folder called Kingpin Spy. It's really cool.